Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
Shalom.
Hello.
My first question is, what are your names?
My name is Shira Sherbo.
My name is Pesach Sherbo.
Okay, here comes the next question. What were your names before you took this fun journey?
Well, I used to be Sherry Zonker.
Huh.
My name in America was Paul Sherbo. Pesach was my birth name. I didn't use it in America, but now I'm using it that I'm here in Israel.
Mm-hmm. And you're both from America?
Originally.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, yeah, so we used to be Sherry and Paul, and now we're Shira and Pesach Sherbo. Okay, so I'll start with my journey, and I'll get to this fun journey, and I'll get to the place where Pesach comes into my life. In a nutshell, I grew up in New York State, and then when I was 19, I moved to Texas, and when I was 54, I moved to Israel.
Huh.
So now I'll fill in. So I grew up Roman Catholic in Rome, New York, and when my mother was in her 30s and I was in the 6th grade, something happened in her life that changed the course of my life. And what happened was that she made some friends from the South, from Texas, and they came to the door on a door-knocking campaign to save souls, and they were like, "Hi, we're from Texas. Do you want to study the Bible?" So my mother, because she met these people, because she studied the Bible, because they asked her if she was saved, she didn't know if she was saved. So this led to me also having some Bible studies. And so my dad was very upset with the whole thing. He thought my mom had joined a cult.
Was he religious?
He was a non-practicing Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And he sent us to Catholic school. So when I went to raise my hand in school to Sister Mary Constantine and told her my mom and I are having these Bible studies with these really nice people from the Church of Christ, and she was very upset about it, and she made an appointment with me to talk to the priest. And so I was asking questions to the priest, telling him what was going on at my house. And I still remember he was very angry, and he just said, "You're questioning the Catholic Church?" Like that. He was like, this is in the early 70s. He called my dad, and he told him, "You better get a hold of your rebellious daughter." And I wasn't rebellious. I was just a kid asking questions. But it was seen at that time, rebellious, disrespectful, ungrateful, that I would question the Pope and the nuns and the priests and this whole establishment. And I probably wouldn't have thought to question it, except that these people came to our door, and they knew we were Catholic, and so they were kind of coming from the viewpoint of the Catholics aren't saved. And so I wanted to know. So in the end, I ended up also making friends with the people from the Church of Christ. And when I was 19, it led me, someone showed me her yearbook from Abilene Christian University, and she said, "You need to get out of Rome, New York. You need to go to the Bible Belt. This is where Abilene, Texas is the best place to meet a man, get married, raise a family." And as a young girl, I look back now, and I was, for someone in the 70s, I remember graduating from high school and this woman asking all the girls, "What do you want to be?" And you were supposed to be something like, I want to go to college, and I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a stewardess or a teacher or something. And I honestly said, I don't really want to go to college. I really want to get married, and I want to have a bunch of kids.
Oh.
And that was not very cool back then. And I don't even know where this came from, because my parents weren't really conservative, but I know that I watched shows like the Waltons and the Brady Bunch.
Sorry, did you have any siblings?
I had an older brother and 2 younger sisters.
Oh, just so you
I
are
was
from the
one of the oldest cousins on both sides. I did a lot of babysitting, and I would play orphanage in the attic. And so all I wanted, really, as a young girl, all I saw myself doing, even when a bunch of us were going to a Bachman Turner Overdrive concert and the pot was going around the car, even at 16 years old, I was like, no, I'm going to be a mommy, and I better not take these drugs. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't know where this came from, but in my heart, that's all I wanted from a young age was I saw myself with all these children, even to the point of, they said, if you go to Texas, that's the place where you'll meet a man. I had a picture of Michael Landon on my wall from Little House on the Prairie. So I wanted this kind of this old-fashioned life. That's what I had in my head. I went to Texas, and all Mom's friends helped me with that, get me to the college, get me in the dorm, helped me with everything. So when I got to Texas, it was just like they said, it was good advice. Abilene was a good place. I think I met the only guy on campus that would give me the 6 kids, because it was not a thing back then. He asked me to marry him.
So you have 6 kids?
I have 6 kids. I have my Brady
gosh.
bunch.
Okay.
I have 3 boys and 3 girls. And
Okay.
we were just kind of an oddity, in the early 80s to be having all these kids. But so I feel like God gave me the desire of my heart. But I had 2 things. Like, I really wanted to know the truth about God and what he wanted from me. And I also wanted my family. So I got my family. Now, I do remember when I was in the Church of Christ, I read the Bible for the first time. And the pastor had said, now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions, because the priest had said, you're questioning. Okay. But this pastor was like, no, ask questions. You can ask questions. So I had a question. And my very first question was when I read the Bible and I read the creation story. And it said that God rested on the 7th day. And I said, why is everything closed on Sunday? Like, why aren't we going to church on the wrong day? Like, God rested on the 7th day, but our day of rest is Sunday. And here I am, I'm just a teenager, and I just had a question. And he said, oh, that's the Old Testament. We're not under the Old Testament. We're under the New Testament. In the New Testament, church is on Sunday.
Okay.
And I was like, and I asked my mom, and I said, Mom, doesn't this bother you? Like, am I the only one that thinks this is weird? And I was. It was like, she goes, well, the pastor knows. They go to college for this stuff, And so I kind of just put it on the back burner, and it never came up again until I was like in my 40s. And so I was raising my kids, and it was the time when they were all in high school and college, and we got our first computer. And you know how everything changes when you get a computer, because then you don't have to ask anybody anything. You just Google everything. And I remembered this question that I had from a long time ago, and I Googled, how did the Sabbath get changed to Sunday, or who changed the Sabbath? And I found out tons and tons of things about the Sabbath that was disturbing to me, about how many Jewish people were killed for keeping the Sabbath.
Have you seen any Jews there where you live?
I didn't know any Jewish people.
Well,
It was just I was just in the Christian church. What I did for my children was we had church around the table. You know how some people homeschool? Well, we did home church.
well,
For like 15 years. We had a meal every Wednesday night because the kids were all in sports, and Wednesday night there was no sports, and so we would turn off the TV. And a friend of mine had said, nobody eats around the table anymore, and everybody's going here and going there. And she goes, the best thing you can do for your children if you want to teach them about God is sit them around the table. And so we would make it fun, games, prizes, Bible stories, and this is still
Christian Bible.
you know what? I was very interested in Genesis, in Exodus, all those stories of Noah and Abraham, and so I really started there. So it was kind of, David and Daniel, and we was everywhere, So that's how I We did go to a lot of churches, but mostly I felt like it was my responsibility as a mother to have this home church with my kids. So between getting a computer and being able to Google things, and also there was this show on TV called Light of the Southwest, which he actually became a guest on this show. But I'm flipping through the channels in my 40s, I guess, and there's different teachers on there, and they're saying, the Jews don't say Old Testament, the Jews say Torah. And so I learned this word Torah.
Wow.
And the Sabbath was never changed. The Sabbath is, was, and always will be. And
What
so
was this show?
it was called Light of the Southwest. And
Oh.
these were not Jewish people talking. They were Christians that called Messianics. Okay? But they had my attention because they talked about a question that I had years ago about the Sabbath. And they were saying, no, the Sabbath never changed. And I was like, I knew it. Because I saw the eternal Sabbath, the everlasting Sabbath, the Sabbath for all generations. And I thought, who comes along and all this? And then when I Googled it, I found who came along and changed the Sabbath, So anyways, the kids saw me slowly lighting candles Friday night.
Wow.
I was working on Saturdays. I quit working on Saturday.
By yourself.
I don't know. Okay. And I was garage selling on Saturday. And I said, we're not supposed to spend money on Saturday. And it was just one thing after the other. So one thing that I really remember is I was selling things on eBay back then. We got a computer, I'm selling on eBay, and you have a PayPal account, and then you have to have a password. And my password was preserve P, because I had read in the Psalms of King David always talking about God saving him. And God would preserve him and his posterity. And it jumped off the page to me because my mom was like, everybody's like, you got to get saved. And King David talked about being saved, but it was like a physical. God saved him from his political enemies. Like they were saved from Goliath. They were saved from Pharaoh. And so I just felt like God was going to preserve or save me and my posterity, my children. And so my PayPal password for years was, my kids would be like, what's your password, Mom? Preserve P. And it was kind of a weird password, but it was something to me that it was like, I know God's going to preserve me and my posterity. So that was mine. So they saw me lighting the candles. Then we started eating kosher, and it was like, what? No more pepperoni pizza.
You start eating kosher
as much as I could. In my little family.
Without being Jewish.
Without being Jewish, I was drawn to all of these things that the Jews did, and I don't know why. I wanted to keep the Sabbath of whatever I could understand that meant. I wanted to eat kosher from whatever I could understand that meant. I was saying Torah, it's not the Old Testament. And so I wrote a few notes here. But, and then there was this video going around. And the video was all about Christmas and Easter, how they were pagan holidays. And I said to the kids, I'm not going to put up a Christmas tree this year. And I Googled, what do the Jews do on Christmas? And it said a lot of times they work because their Christian friends want the day off. And they go out for Chinese food because that's the only thing that's open. So I told the kids, we're going to go out for Chinese food for Christmas. By this time, they were older. And they were like, fine, Mom's doing her thing. We'll go out for Chinese food. And they didn't really care so much at that point about Easter bunnies. And, it might have been a lot harder if I had little kids to change. But by this time, it wasn't so much. And so my kids were watching me,
Sorry for that question. You don't have to answer. Were you divorced already or no?
Okay, so No, but I had, in 2010, I got my own apartment, but I never got a divorce. I left.
Separate.
We separated.
Okay.
But it was not like we eventually got divorced without a lawyer. A very simple, because all the kids were out of the house. We were married 33 years. And so, but it was, my focus was totally on the kids because the marriage never really was that. I feel like God put him in my life. Like I said, it was about having the most amazing kids. The kids, remember, I was raising this orphanage as a little girl, and my kids don't like this, but I call them like, oh, you were my little orphans. But we really had no money, and the way that they live now is amazing to me, but they had to buy their own car. They had to pay for their own college. They're all college graduates. They had to even pay for their own weddings, mostly. And nothing was handed to them. They didn't have like their own room and their own bathroom. Okay, so I was given a wonderful experience as a mother, but when I got into my 50s, I was like, am I ever going to experience what it's like to be married, to be a wife? Because it wasn't. It was two people living in the same house, but not really that soul connection. And so all this was happening. Whenever one of these Messianic guys came to town, I would go to their meetings. And I was very interested in what's so funny? Oh,
Nothing. I'm just listening.
Okay.
I'm fascinated.
Okay,
Oh,
he's almost getting to the point where he comes into
from
the
different worlds.
She'll get to it in a few minutes.
I'm right here. Okay, so I met someone who said, there's this Jewish guy in Israel that talks about the Torah on the internet, and she would give me his web address. And at this time, I got my first little iPad, and I'm like, okay, what is it? How do you spell Sherbo? And I'm writing this down. And of course, I would lose a piece of paper and never do it. And then I'd run into her, and she'd be like, did you ever look up that Jewish guy? And I'm like, oh, give it to me again. 5 times I must have, and it got embarrassing. I thought, I'm going to run into her. She's going to ask me. So I'm like, type this in. I'm going to look up this guy on the website. And I get to his website, and he's got a picture of his wife, Hannah, who had just passed away. He was married to a Jewish woman for 44 years in Israel, and he was sitting Shiva. And I thought, wow, I finally get to this guy's web address.
He was sitting.
And he was sitting Shiva.
And you got.
And I'm like going to his website.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And so it was just like, wow. You want to go now?
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep this very, very short because we're trying to keep this as short as possible here. I grew up as a Reformed Jew / secular. My family was that, although before they left Europe, they were all religious. But when they got to America, it all changed. Everybody knows the story of that. Anyway, and while I'm studying, and I was always studied Torah anyway, I just loved it. I just would study Torah and all kinds of the Jewish stuff. And sit down, it's so fun.
It's okay. That's the world we live
Yeah,
in.
that's the world we live in. Okay. There must be a decline in
It was
there.
fun.
Okay, it'll eventually stop in a few minutes, I guess, or whatever. Okay, there we
It
go.
is.
All right, that's
Okay, so where were we?
when I came to Israel, and I've been living off and on in Israel since 1965. And
Why?
why? I don't know. I got here, my grandmother bought me a ticket to come here. I came here when I was 20 years old, and I fell in love with Israel, and Israel fell in love with me. That was just it. I wasn't a Zionist or anything. It just happened. So, anyway, I started studying Torah and I started studying things, not wanting to be yet a practicing Jew, but as I'm reading all this stuff, I, in my wisdom, I guess you could say, my daughters did not marry Jewish guys. They married Gentile guys. And because of that, I decided I'm going to start studying some of the New Testament stuff and all, because if I have grandchildren and they know all about that, they're going to ask me questions about it. I can't be dumb. I have to know.
Okay, you actually went opposite direction.
Yeah.
You were learning New Testament, you were learning wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I learned a bunch of the New Testament, and I actually got to a position, well, maybe there's some truth here in this whole thing. And I decided I was going to start researching. And I spent, I guess, a total of 12, 13 years researching and reading the New Testament in Greek and in Hebrew and in Aramaic.
Fascinating.
And I found a New Testament from the Eastern Orthodox Catholics that was different than anything people have in America. There's added verses to the stuff in America and all that. And I just came to the conclusion in the end it was all a lie. It was made up. That was my own conclusion. And people can come up with what they want, but I found verification from people on the internet that had done the same study I had done. In the meantime, I started teaching the Messianic Jews about Torah. And I would travel to America twice a year and travel all over America.
So you already lived in Israel?
Yeah.
Okay. So you moved to Israel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I came back to Israel, I don't know, the early 90s, 90,
Okay.
91. And I started teaching in different Messianic congregations around America. And I got invited, and I'd go and I would teach all about it. And even though I knew in my heart that I was not being truthful because there was a lie here somewhere, and I set up, one of the people who used to listen to me, my program, I had a daily radio program on the internet, was a lady in Abilene, and then she wanted me to come there and speak to the group there. So I came there once.
That name of the city sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Abilene. Yeah.
Now, Shira was part of the group, but she was not, we didn't even know each other. And so
it wasn't you who invited?
No. There was another lady.
Oh, wow.
And we first met at a lunch at this lady's house where there was a big group meeting. And I met her there. And this was maybe a year after Hanukkah, she'd let me, memory be blessed, she'd passed. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of wandering around. I closed myself down to any other relationships. I just figured, okay, I'm doing God's work and I'm by myself and everything's cool. So I was there and I met her and I met one of her sons there at the meeting. And I also met one daughter or two at a restaurant.
That was calling,
yeah. So
she knew.
Yeah. Anyway, a year goes by. It was a year, 18 months, something like that. The lady who was supposed to, that it would take care of my tour in Abilene every time I came, which was up from the town where I used to go to the GLC.
God's Learning Channel.
God's Learning Channel on TV, and they used to interview me, and I used to teach on that too, and I was there to the Messianics. Anyway, her mother became ill, the other ladies, and she asked her if she'd handled my trip for me, make some appointments for me and things like that, which she did. And so we spent a week together, kind of close, not close, I mean, but she was supervising where I was going and all that kind of stuff. And, she started asking questions and we were doing things. But I may have the order mixed up, but the thing is that I didn't know who she was at all. I did not know she was married, divorced, widowed. I didn't know anything. And so I kept my defenses kind of up because I realized this could be a woman that I could like, but she wasn't Jewish, so what's the point? Because even though I was a secular or reformed, I would never in a million years marry a non-Jewish woman.
Well,
And it just, we talked some on the phone. We didn't get any chance to spend any time alone together, except with her kids around in a coffee house. and we just kind of chatted because it was forbidden for me to do that. And I had no idea what her status was. So I found, how can I say it? I found Shira very interesting. And I liked the way she thought about things. And it impressed me so much that she had 6 adult children that are all college grads in this day and age.
mm-hmm.
No criminal records, no nothing. Just good people. It takes strength. So I said, well, this, it'd be nice, but she's not Jewish. And I don't know what her status was. So we talked about it a little bit. And one day I asked her, point blank, on the phone. I was back here.
I think so.
Yeah. I asked her, I said, look, I'd like to talk to you more, but I don't even know your marital status. What's the story here? So she said, I'm separated. I said, you mean you're not divorced? She said, no. I said, okay, that's done. Our conversation's over with. And if you want to have any more conversation, you'll get a hold of me if you ever get a divorce. And
So it was sorta, kinda proposal for the future.
yeah, it was, yeah. But I couldn't do anything. I mean, what am I going to do? And I still have the problem that I had to wrestle with in my mind that she was not Jewish. So to make the whole thing short, she calls me up and says, well, the papers are filed. We're going to be divorced in 30 days.
So, sorry to interrupt you. Did you already had an interest in him at that time?
I did.
How come?
There was, I don't know, it was, I feel like he was Jewish and he had the truth. I just felt like it made, I don't know, like there was just something there. It wasn't really, like we say, it wasn't like, oh, this physical thing, but it was like, I needed him somehow. Like I needed to be with him. I didn't want him to leave. After that week that he was there, I remember like fighting back tears that he was leaving. Because like the whole Bible is about the Jews, and I felt like I'm finally learning from the person I'm supposed to be learning from, and so when he was kind of saying, I like you, I was kind of like, I like you too, but like, so I went to my husband and I told him, I said, that Jewish guy that I always listen to, it's like, yeah, and I said, well, I feel something for him and he feels something for me, but we can't move forward because of you and I said, this, I said, we can get a very simple divorce.
Disillusion.
Yeah.
And there was no lawyer, there was no trial, there was nothing. It was just very easy, and we're still friends to this day.
You were still in America. You were still in Israel.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Israel.
she got the divorce.
I got the
called me
divorce,
up.
yeah.
We knew what date it was going to be final, and so I said, okay, we can proceed.
Yeah.
And I then, well, I don't think I ever really proposed to her. When she told me that the divorce was final, I announced on my radio program the next morning that I was engaged. I was getting
Did
married.
you know?
I heard the radio program, I'm like, really?
No, I didn't. I never really asked her. No.
Okay, it's a fun journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, we talked about when we were going to do it. And I said, well, we have to wait 90 days in Texas to get married after your divorce. But I said, if we go to Oklahoma, we can do it in 30 days. So I hopped on a plane, rented a car, came down where she was, and we ended up getting married in Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh.
In a civil ceremony. And then she went with me on some more stops on my tour that for that trip. If I remember, it was on that trip. And then we came back here. Now, I want you to know that I never, ever, ever once asked her to become Jewish. I never asked her to convert anything.
Okay.
Did you have another question?
Well, I'm stunned with your story by now. I want to know, how did this part happen? So you came to Israel, non-Jewish wife of Reformed Jew.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And my
So
kids
where do we
having
go from there?
My kids having fits. My kids, they were stunned. So he did something he thought he would never do,
Right.
and I did something I thought I would never do. And we still can't explain
Normal people don't do that, actually.
why did he marry a non-Jew? He never thought he
And
would.
bring her back to Israel.
And why did I come? And
Have you ever
my
been
kids,
to Israel before? No. Okay.
So my kids were my whole world. By this time, I had grandkids, and I needed to be with him. So after I was here about a year,
Well, I was continuing on my Messianic teachings to the Messianic people.
Where were you living together?
I had an apartment in Kiryat Yam,
Okay.
which is between Haifa and Akko,
Okay.
right by the water. And anyway, and she was helping me with the radio program. And one morning, we just kind of woke up and said, "Why are we still doing this?" And we turned off the computer. We just stopped doing. I stopped doing all my teachings. And I went away from it because I knew I was lying to people anyway. I was trying to be truthful with them, but they wouldn't allow me to be totally truthful. Let's put it that way. And one morning, we woke up, and Shira comes and says, I gotta tell you something. She says, it's nice that you're getting me Israeli citizenship. I'm gonna have an Israeli passport. I'm gonna be able to call myself a true Israeli because I'm a naturalized Israeli citizen. But there's all these people in the world that buy their T-shirts at their little Messianic conventions that says, "I am Israel" for $10, and they're no part of Israel at all. But I want to be part of Israel, and she says, that means I want to be part of the Jewish family. Oh.
You decided.
Yeah, we never talked about it. She just decided. Because I would never force her to do it. It couldn't become a condition of the marriage or anything, or they wouldn't convert her.
So where did you go from there?
so he said there's lots of ways to go about it, and he took me in Haifa. There's a Reformed congregation. We went there a little while, and I said, no, I need something more serious than this. So,
Here in Israel, you can only do either Reformed or Orthodox. You can't do conservative.
Okay.
But I wanted her to see all the different choices of what we can do. Yeah. And she chose the Mahadrim, the Orthodox conversion.
Were you ready to become observant?
Absolutely.
You were.
I had been ready for years. I just needed the emphasis to get me over the line. That's one of the things Shira said. We sold our apartment in Kiryat Yam. We're moving to a frum community. And what, you just flip a switch and be observant?
I didn't know how it was going to happen because for me everything was kind of slowly, like a lifetime leading to step by step by step. And he was just going to go, whoop,
But you wanted to convert.
I wanted to convert. I told him, he said, I'll never forget when I said, I'm going to convert and I hope I don't leave you behind.
And I told her, I'm one step behind you in this process. And she says, what do you mean? You're the Jew. You're supposed to lead me. And I said, no, husband and wife can't do that. The person that wants to convert has to be the leader. They can't say they're converting for their husband or wife, or they will not convert them. They have to want the conversion for Hashem. That's the only reason for the conversion.
No, and you started how?
So it wasn't working there in Kiryat Yam. I didn't know the language. There were no English speakers. And my husband, he was like asking around, and he found out, someone said, have you heard of Ascent in Sfat? There's lots of English speakers there. You should go. And we said, no, we've never heard of that. So we found out that Chaya Bracha Leiter was teaching a class at Ascent on Wednesdays, and so we drove an hour
Each way.
each way every Wednesday. When I was in her class, I said to him, this is it. These women are the cream of the crop. These are the women that I'm honored to even be in their room with them. And I would record her sessions because she did use like some Hebrew, and I would just get lost sometimes, and he would have to tell me what. We'd go over it, like what she was being said. Then somebody told me about Judy Pakin. Judy Pakin has classes on Mondays. So then we're coming to Svat twice a week, hour up, hour back. And so, of course, the next logical thing was, why don't you just move here? And we did.
Yeah, we did. I
We're
told her,
condensing everything.
yeah, we're condensing it, but I told her, what, I'm going to move at my age? I got to pack the house, I got to do all this stuff. I mean, I was pretty old at that point, and we did it. We found this place here that we're living in now, and we sold the place in Kiryat Yam pretty quickly. It went really good, and we got a good price for it. And the rest is history. We tried to open a file for sure in the Rabbanut in Jerusalem to go on with the conversion process. The branch office that we were assigned to was Haifa. So we were having a real tough time. They just, all these delays and these things. So finally I went to Rabbi Bitzritsky. And I sat and talked to him. We explained the situation. And he says, well, maybe we ought to talk to Rabbi Eliyahu, which we did. And he picked up the phone and talked to somebody in Jerusalem.
So, how did the process went for you?
It was the wonderful women in Svat. I'm going to cry.
It's okay.
They invited us for Shabbat. I got to see what Shabbat was. I started learning a little bit at Mahon Alta. I just started going to the classes at Judy's and continuing at Ascent. And Chaya Bracha Leiter put Rabbi Mordechai Tziv, call him Big Mo. He would come over here once a week and, just go over like, these are the prayers you should be saying. And at the same time, Pesach was on his journey, we were becoming Orthodox Jews together.
I chose Chabad, only because they had an older person's learning course there, and it was all in English. Even though I spoke Hebrew, it was easier to learn this in English, and so I got involved with Chabad.
I want to ask you, maybe not very pleasant for you to answer the question. Was it an easy journey for you?
No, I cried a lot. I cried a lot because it's a very strange place to be, to feel like you've left everything to join this family. And you feel a little bit rejected, or that you have to go through so much to be a part. And it's like, what else can I do to show you that, I'm here, I'm in Israel, I want this. And I had to, seem like I always, wasn't doing it right, wasn't good enough. Will I ever be good enough? Will I ever really be a part of this family? And it's just hard.
It seems like it took a long time, but honestly, from the time that the teeth file was opened until she went to the Bet Din, it's only 2 years.
Yeah.
And they usually require you, here in Israel, they require you to go to a school in Tel Aviv.
We've heard worse
for
stories.
English speakers.
Yeah.
And you have to pass examinations and write essays and da-da-da. And they kept telling us here in Haifa, well, who are you learning from? Who are you learning from? Who's teaching you this stuff? They didn't know anybody here in Tzfat. And finally, thanks to some intervention, we got a date in Adar to go to the court.
I want to go a little farther back. Would you, as a mother of 6 kids, consider your journey as having from conceiving a child to the childbirth? Did you ever compare your journey into Judaism as having this harsh, not very easy time.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Exactly like that.
So my question is this, was the giving birth to 6 kids, strangely enough, was it helpful for you to become this tough and determined?
I'm sure it all helped me a lot. Just everything I had been through, my whole journey. And one of the things that was going on through his conversion and it's called the Baal Tshuva, and my conversion at the same time was, I said, what about my children? Like, what's the deal? And we learned about the Bnei Noach. We learned about the 7 the righteous Gentiles. And we said, if your kids are just righteous Gentiles, they don't have to eat kosher. They don't have to keep the Sabbath. They just have to be good people. And it helped me to relax. It's like, okay, well, they are good people. And they have to know who God is, and they do. And so...
This is why, am I jumping forward? This is why you began teaching Bnei Noach?
Yeah, actually.
Primarily because
of my concern about my kids. So we started Torah for the Nations.
Torah for the Nations. Do you still do it?
Yes.
Now, this is another, maybe not pleasant question. With you, it's all kind of normal, Pesach, I would say, because a lot of people, Jewish people, they start as Reform, start conservative, they become, and vice versa, unfortunately. But with you, out of the blue, practically, of nowhere, by yourself, discovering this and going for it and going through the hardship with this, have you ever regretted?
No, it was definitely my destiny. I'm supposed to be Jewish, and here we are.
So how are your kids? How you balance all this?
Thank God the kids have always been respectful. My daughter's getting married. She's getting married on a Wednesday because they already know, don't get married on Mom Shabbat, and they're so good about it. They're so good. And Pesach, I go about twice a year to see the kids.
So life is good.
Yeah, life is good.
So you came to Tzfat because of the English community.
Yeah.
Yes? What do you feel about Tzfat now?
Tzfat is the best place on earth. And everybody that lives here kind of knows it, I think. We all still, it doesn't get any better than this. I mean, of course, Jerusalem is Jerusalem, but this is just very much of a nice, small community, a very, very healthy English community where, we just feel very loved. Pesach just had surgery, and I was so loved over Passover.
So he had surgery over Passover?
His name is Pesach, and he had surgery over Pesach.
Okay, and when you tell a little bit shortly, when you came home, because you weren't here,
I wasn't here to do all the preparations.
You were with Pesach?
I was with him.
Yeah. And what did you find? And you have a lot of cleaning.
Yes, all the kitchen was spotless. People brought over food to the hilt, and we had everything that we needed. We were blessed with money, generous amounts of money. We had people totally do
the house is ready for Pesach. It's cleaned and everything.
Yeah, the refrigerator, everything. It was amazing community here that we live in.
So, as a person...
And all the prayers going for him with his surgery, all the psalms that were being prayed was amazing.
As a person who lives in Tzfat, I have to tell you, they say that people do not choose Tzfat. Tzfat chooses people.
Yeah.
I guess you are chosen people, we are chosen people. But I think in your case specifically, Tzfat chose you to be here and to have a happy and wonderful life. And I want to just thank you Thank you very much. I've been always fascinated with your story, and thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this amazing, fun journey with the world. I wish you
Right,
all the
thank
best.
you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, healthy, long life together in Spain.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, kill it.
It was